Fellowship Farm. Book 3, Visitors Arrive. The school year has just ended for Leezah, Skye-Maree and Olingah of Fellowship Farm. They are very excited about the 2 months of summer fun stretching ahead. Then, one morning, they find a letter in the mailbox from their cousins, Nick and Annissa. The letter has some very exciting news, which promises to make the holidays even better than they imagined. Chapter 1, A Letter Arrives at Fellowship Farm. As the Fitzgerald children finished their morning chores and headed towards the farmhouse, they felt very excited. It was the first day of summer holidays. 2 months of beaches and sand dunes, fishing and campfires, tunnels in the hay, rope swings in the apple orchard, tree houses, drawing, reading, and other wonderful things stretched before them. But best of all, they would be able to spend long hours with their new puppies, Flea, Flex, and Fizz. The puppies were covered in black, brown, and white patches. They were only 14 weeks old. Skye, Leezah, and Olingah had found them abandoned in a bag by the side of the road. At first, they had been too small to take out of the yard. But now they were getting a little bigger, so the children could take them across the paddocks on their leashes. When the puppies were a bit bigger, the children would start training them. But for now, they just used their leashes to stop the puppies getting lost. Leezah, Skye, and Olingah attached the leashes to the leather collars around the puppies' necks and led them out of the backyard. "Let's walk them over to the dam," suggested Skye. The dam was in a paddock on the opposite side of the road to the farmhouse. It was safe for the children to cross the road because there were hardly any cars. The Fitzgerald farm was the last farm on the road that came from Kellyton Township. The children opened the big blue gate and crossed the road. The puppies sniffed excitedly and wagged their tails as they explored the new territory. After opening the gate on the other side of the road and closing it behind themselves, the children and their little puppies walked slowly through the grass with the morning sun on their backs. They walked past the shearing shed and past the pens that held the sheep during the shearing time. Leezah didn't like the shearing. The shearers seemed to be so rough with the poor sheep. So Skye and Olingah helped in the shearing shed, and Leezah helped her dad or mum prepare the food for the shearers. The shearing shed was empty as they went past, but there were lots of interesting smells for curious puppies to explore. They continued up the hill and down the other side. When they arrived at the dam on the other side of the hill, the children took off their boots and together the puppies and children squelched around in the muddy, shallow water near the edge. They weren't allowed to swim when there was no adult, even though they were all good swimmers, but they could play at the edge of the dam. After squelching in the mud, 3 muddy puppies and 6 muddy human feet padded along the little jetty that stretched out to the middle of the dam. They sat on the edge and dangled their feet in the water. The water was cool even though the summer sun was quite warm. After a while, the puppies started to fidget and they pulled at their leashes to keep going. The children dried off their feet with their socks and slipped their boots back on. In summer, they wore boots because of the snakes. They knew that all the snakes in Tasmania were poisonous, and it was the summertime that the snakes were out and about. Before they left the dam, the puppies had a drink at the edge of the dam. Then they climbed over the hill once again. When they got to the top, they saw that a motorbike with a big yellow pouch on either side had pulled up at the gate of their farm. "The mail's here!" yelled Olingah. "Race you to the mailbox. Last one there's a rotten egg." Olingah took off down the hill. Flea ran excitedly beside him, ears flapping and tongue dripping. Olingah's older sisters followed quickly after him. Even though Leezah, who was 10, and Skye, who was 8, were both faster than their 6-year-old brother, the older sisters let Olingah win. When they got to the green mailbox, they saw that there was a bundle of mail sticking out of it. There was the usual assortment of bills and bank statements, papers and magazines for Dr. and Mr. Fitzgerald. There was a letter in a blue envelope addressed to Romy and Flip. And there, at the bottom of the pile, was a yellow envelope that made the children's eyes open wide with excitement. It was addressed to Olingah, Leezah and Skye-Maree Fitzgerald, Fellowship Farm, Kellyton, Tasmania. Chapter 2, A Visit is Planned. The children hurried through the gate at the front of the house and went around the back. They unhooked the leashes from the puppies' collars and hung the leashes on the hooks in the boot room. They dumped the rest of the mail on the kitchen table. Then they sat down on the back veranda to open the unexpected yellow letter. Inside there was a piece of paper covered in stickers and writing in purple pen. The letter said, "Dear cousins, how are you? We are very well. We only have 1 week left of school. Then we are coming to Fellowship Farm. Can you believe we will be together for 2 whole weeks? We can't wait to see your new puppies. Lots of love, Nick and Annissa." "Nick and Annissa are coming to Fellowship Farm!" exclaimed Leezah. She ran inside to the kitchen and picked up the radio. She pressed down on the button and said, "Base to Mobile 1, over." She waited for a minute, but there was no answer. Her father must be away from the ute. She tried again. This time Leezah said, "Base to Mobile 2, over." Her mum's voice came back. "Mobile 2 to base, over." "Mum, are Nick and Annissa coming to stay?" "Over." "Yes, they are. We'll talk more at lunchtime, honey." "Over." The Fitzgerald children were ecstatic. As Olingah and Skye danced and yelled in the background, Leezah tried to keep her voice steady as she pressed the radio button one last time to say, "Over and out." At about 12 o'clock, their mum came back to the farmhouse from the back paddocks. She parked her orange ute out the front of the farmhouse and was immediately swamped by 3 very happy children. Dr. Fitzgerald pretended to be frightened. She quickly locked her door, rolled up the window and covered her head with her arms. The children laughed and banged on the window. Their mum quickly slid over to the passenger door and jumped out of the ute. She ran around the ute and leaped the low, dilapidated fence. Then she ran to the back of the house with 3 giggling children chasing her. As she pulled her boots off, Leezah, Skye and Olingah caught up with her and wrapped their arms around her. Immediately, there were 100 questions fired at Dr. Fitzgerald. "Is it true? When are they coming? Can we meet them at the airport? How long are they staying? Are Auntie Jen and Uncle Karim coming with them?" "How about this?" suggested their mum. "Leezah, you make a salad. Skye, you get the things out of the fridge for me to make the sandwiches. Olingah, you set the table. I'll go have a shower and get ready to go to the surgery. And then we'll all have some lunch and I will answer all your questions." The children hurried to the kitchen and left Dr. Fitzgerald to take off her boots in peace. The lunch was all ready when Mr. Fitzgerald came in and washed his hands. So they sat down together to eat. The children were dying to get answers to their questions, but they knew that if they rushed their mum, she would just make them wait even longer. When everyone had taken a sandwich and some salad from the dishes in the middle of the table and started to eat, Dr. Fitzgerald began to explain. The children's Auntie Jen and Uncle Karim were going away for 2 weeks, so they had organised with the Fitzgeralds for their children Nick, who was 11, and Annissa, who was 6, to come and stay at the farm for that time. Dr. and Mr. Fitzgerald had decided to keep it as a surprise, so until the letter arrived, the children had no idea that their cousins were coming to stay. "When do they arrive?" asked Skye. "Next Monday at 8 a.m., said Mummy. "They are coming by themselves. We will go to Launceston to meet them at the airport and bring them straight back to the farm. At the end of their stay, Auntie Jen and Uncle Karim will come for a weekend and then take them back to Sydney." "Fantastic!" After lunch, Dr. Fitzgerald left for the town, where she worked each afternoon as a vet. Mr. Fitzgerald went up to the shed where he spent the afternoon working on the tractor engine. The children played and planned for their cousin's visit, until at 4:30 their dad came to get them for the feeding out. Chapter 3, Off to the Airport. For the rest of the week, the children took it in turns to colour in the day on the calendar. On Monday, the whole family woke up an hour earlier than usual, at 5 o'clock. They gathered in the living room for morning prayers. Daddy said a special prayer for journeys because 4 of his favourite people were going to be on the road to Launceston and back. After prayers was breakfast, then morning chores. When all the animals were fed, the children changed out of their farm clothes. A trip to Launceston was a special occasion, and greeting their cousins at the airport was a very special occasion, so they all put on their best clothes. Leezah, Skye-Maree and Olingah each had one nice outfit that they wore on special days, like 19-day feasts, holy days or parties. They called their good clothes their feast clothes. Leezah's feast dress was a present from her great-grandma. It was dark green with tiny yellow puppies scampering across the bottom and on the pockets. It reached all the way down to her ankles. She put it on and pulled her long black hair into 2 pigtails. Skye's feast dress had little circles on the straps and waist called sequins that sparkled in the light. Her dress was pink. It reached down to her knees with a little bit of a petticoat underneath. She had picked it out when her Auntie Alex took her to Hobart earlier in the year. Auntie Alex loved all her nieces and nephews, but she had a special friendship with Skye. Auntie Alex had been with Skye's mummy when Skye was being born, and she had chosen her name. So sometimes she did special things with Skye. Auntie Alex loved frills and bows and things that sparkled. Skye also had some clips that matched her dress. She clipped them into her dark, frizzy hair. Olingah's feast clothes were also very smart. He had some navy blue pants with a little leather belt, just like Daddy's. And he had a pink t-shirt with long sleeves. Around the neck were little roses. Whenever he wore it, Daddy called Olingah the rose among the roses. Olingah's feast clothes had come from the Kellyton market that was held every Sunday. The Fitzgerald family went each week to the market. Sometimes, for a special treat, they hitched the big old Clydesdale horse to the cart and rode in with the horse and cart. When they were all dressed, they went out to the living room. Mummy helped Olingah brush the knots out of his shoulder-length fine brown hair, while his sisters swirled around, making their feast dresses swish out. The girls imagined they were ballet dancers. "Okay, let's get our things into the car, kids," said Mummy, playfully patting Olingah's bottom with the brush before putting it away. The drive to Launceston took a long time, so they each took a pillow and one toy. Mummy had packed a bag with some water, crackers and fruit. Olingah carried it out to the orange ute. They gave their dad a big hug and a kiss and piled into the car. For the journey to Launceston, they could all sit by a window. Skye in the front seat and Leezah and Olingah in the back. On the way back, someone would need to sit in the middle of the front seat and in the middle of the back seat. But the excitement of having the cousins in the car would stop them feeling carsick. "Who has their seatbelt on?" asked Mum before starting the car. "Me," said the Fitzgerald voices. "Good, let's go," she said and turned the key. The orange ute pulled out of the farm property onto the dirt road. Daddy shut the blue gate behind them and waved as they drove away. They opened their windows and felt the cool morning breeze on their faces as they drove past the other farms. Soon they reached Kellyton Township. They passed the animal hospital where Dr. Fitzgerald would go to work later that afternoon. They continued past the bakery and the newsagent that was already open. The rest of the shops in town were still closed. Then the Fitzgerald family took the road that led to Launceston. As they drove, they played I Spy, then car cricket. They sang some songs and then they just sat quietly watching the familiar scenery go by. After more than 1 hour of driving, Skye saw a sign with an airplane on it. Next to the airplane was the number 3. "Nearly there," she said. Chapter 4, Half a Dozen Cousins. Dr. Fitzgerald turned off the main road and into the airport. The children could not sit still. They pulled at their seatbelts so they could sit higher in their seats. They strained their necks towards the terminal as their mum drove past. Dr. Fitzgerald pulled up at the gate of the car park. She pressed a button on a grey box and a ticket came out. She pulled the ticket out of the slot and the gate swung up. The car drove through. The car park was about half full. They found a spot to park. As soon as the car stopped, the children threw off their seatbelts and jumped out of the car. They chatted excitedly as their mum locked the doors. Then they hurried out of the car park, across the pedestrian crossing and towards the terminal. One wall was made completely of glass. In the middle were doors that slid open when the children came close. When the children were smaller, they had thought the electronic sliding doors were magic. The children skipped into the terminal with Dr. Fitzgerald following behind. They looked up at the television set that had information about flight arrival and departure. "Which flight are they on?" asked Leezah. "Q654 from Sydney, due for arrival at 8 a.m, replied Mummy. Leezah looked for information about that flight. It was hard to see because the television was high up. Suddenly she saw Q654. "It's landed! It's landed!" she yelled, grabbing her sister in excitement and nearly ripping some sequins off Skye's feast dress. The 4 Fitzgeralds hurried through the doors that led toward the runway. The children leaped down the cement stairs 2 at a time. Just at the end, Olingah mistimed his step and landed hard on his hands and knees. His sisters were at his side instantly. Olingah struggled with the tears that were nearly bursting out of his eyes. This was not a time to be crying, but his hands were grazed and bleeding, and they hurt. He got slowly to his feet and discovered 2 big holes in his feast pants. The holes revealed bleeding knees. Olingah looked up at his mum and the tears brimmed over and spilled down his little brown face. Mummy put her arm around Olingah and they all went more slowly down the last flight of stairs to the gate. There were other people waiting anxiously for their friends and relatives, and they all watched happily as the door of the plane swung open. The stairs on the wheels were driven up to the plane door, and the passengers began to appear and make their way down the stairs. Olingah's scrapes were forgotten as the three of them pressed their noses against the glass of the windows, concentrating all their attention on spotting their cousins. A long stream of people came out of the plane, across the tarmac and through the gate. Friends and relatives hugged and cried and laughed and moved up from the gate to go and collect luggage. But still no cousins for the Fitzgerald children. "Where are they?" begged Skye of no one in particular. Finally, the stream of passengers stopped coming. No more passengers were leaving the plane. And yet the cousins had not appeared. Leezah and Skye and Olingah's hearts felt heavy with disappointment. They turned to their mum. "Where are they?" asked Skye again, looking at her mum. Mummy stood quietly for a long time, pretending to look very worried. Maybe they fell out during the flight," she suggested. Olingah's eyes opened wide with fear at the thought. "Or maybe they fell asleep inside the plane and don't know they've arrived." "So what will happen?" asked Leezah. "Well, they might just get flown back to Sydney with the next lot of passengers," said Mummy, trying hard to look serious. Just then, the children heard someone calling their names. They turned around to face the tarmac again. Two children who were being accompanied by a hostess were waving madly as they walked from the plane toward the gate. As soon as they stepped inside the gate, Annissa and Nick were swamped in cousin arms. "What took you so long?" asked Skye as she squeezed her little cousin Annissa. "Because we were travelling by ourselves, we had to wait till last so the hostess could bring us over the tarmac," replied Nick. "We thought you fell out of the plane," said Leezah. The cousins started to giggle at the thought as they climbed the stairs to the luggage collection area. Chapter 5: An Unhappy Surprise. Dr. Fitzgerald's name was Rosemary. Leezah, Skye and Olingah's grandmother, who was Dr. Fitzgerald's mother, called her Rosie. But everyone else called her Romy. To Nick and Annissa, she was Aunt Romy. Mr. Fitzgerald's real name was George, but no one ever called him that. He was known to everyone as Flip, so Nick and Annissa called him Uncle Flip. "You all wait here for the baggage," suggested Dr. Fitzgerald. "I'll go and get the car." "Okay, Aunt Romy," said Nick. "Can I come with you and do the ticket?" asked Olingah. "Of course, honey." Olingah and his mum went across the road and through the car park to the little office in the middle of the car park. Dr. Fitzgerald pulled the parking ticket out of her bag and gave it to the man inside. Then she handed him $5. He slid the ticket through a machine and passed it back to her. "Thank you, ma'am," he said. "Thank you," said Dr. Fitzgerald. They found the car and drove to the exit gate. Olingah climbed onto his mum's lap and leaned out the window. He stuck the ticket in the slot. The machine swallowed the card and the gate swung up. They drove through. They pulled up in front of the terminal. The baggage had already arrived and the cousins were waiting by the curb, chattering and laughing. Dr. Fitzgerald put her niece and nephew's bag into the back of the ute and the children climbed in. Dr. Fitzgerald glanced at the sky. There were dark clouds gathering. She decided to cover the back of the ute with the tarpaulin. She quickly hooked it on all sides and got back into the car. "So, who's ready to go to Fellowship Farm?" she asked, turning to the 5 happy faces in the car. "Me!" they all yelled as the ute pulled away from the curb and drove out of the airport. As Dr. Fitzgerald drove quickly along the highway, the children caught up on each other's news. They had not seen each other since May, which was 7 months ago. All the cousins had gathered in Hobart when their great-grandmother had turned 90. The Fitzgeralds had gone from Kellyton with their mum. Annissa and Nick had gone from Sydney with Auntie Jen, Dr. Fitzgerald's sister. And the 5 cousins living in Papua New Guinea came with Dr. Fitzgerald's brother Gray and his wife Laboo. It was a wonderful week together, but they had not seen each other since, so there was a lot to talk about. As the children chatted, Dr. Fitzgerald focused on the driving. She noticed that there were a lot of log trucks on the road, which made her nervous. As the road became 2 lanes in either direction, one of the big trucks came roaring up behind them. As it drove past, a rock on the road got lifted by its wheel. The rock came flying towards the front window. Instantly, the windscreen shattered. Dr. Fitzgerald got a huge shock and swung the wheel of the car to the left, away from the truck. The car veered off the road and spun on the gravel. Leezah and Nick screamed. Chapter 6, A Flat Tyre and an Unplanned Panic. The car skidded to a stop right before a telegraph pole. Dr. Fitzgerald turned quickly to check the startled children. No one had been hurt. She offered a silent prayer of thanks. Annissa and Olingah started to cry quietly. Dr. Fitzgerald took some deep breaths. A hissing sound was coming from outside the car. She took off her seatbelt and stepped out of the car. She walked around it, checking for damage. The front left tire was getting rapidly flatter. It was punctured. Dr. Fitzgerald was shaking now as she started to realize how close they had come to being in a serious accident. She got back into the car. She looked at each of the frightened little faces and asked, "How are you feeling?" No one replied. "Let's sing some prayers, and then we'll work out what to do next," she suggested. Is there any remover of difficulties, save God? Say praise be God, He is God. All are His servants and all abide by His bidding. They sung the prayer 9 times. Then Dr. Fitzgerald turned to face the children again. "Now, a rock from that truck smashed our windscreen and we have a flat tire," she said with a gentle smile. "It won't take long to change the tire, and we'll push out some of the glass so I can see. Then we'll get back to the farm and everything will be fine, okay?" "Okay, Aunt Romy," said Nick. "You'll all need to climb out while I jack up the car," she said, and the children obeyed. Dr. Fitzgerald found her toolbox, placed the jack under the car and jacked it up. She took off the flat tire. The children stood by the car watching. Dr. Fitzgerald suggested they get the food from out of the car and have a little picnic while they waited. Skye and Leezah took the rug covering the back seat of the car and set it out on the grass by the roadside. They put down the crackers and fruit and water, and everyone sat down for an unplanned picnic. The children started to feel better, and as they did, an attack of giggles hit them. Once they had started, they didn't want to stop, so they started telling each other jokes they had heard at school. "How do you get an elephant into the fridge?" asked Skye. "Open the door and push," she answered her own joke. Everybody groaned and giggled. "How do you get a tiger into the fridge?" she asked. "Open the door and push," answered Nick. "No. Open the door, take the elephant out, then push," said Skye. Leezah rolled her eyes. "Your jokes are weird, Skye." Then Leezah started to tell a joke. There were 3 friends, Alice, Sarah and Jack, and the jokes went on. Soon, Dr. Fitzgerald brushed the gravel from her hands and knees and put away the tools. She grabbed an old ice cream container from under her seat and started to tap out some of the shattered glass over the driver's seat. As she did this, some lightning shot across the sky. A few seconds later, some thunder followed. "Alrighty, into the car, everyone," she said, when she had made a decent-sized hole in the shattered glass. Dr. Fitzgerald pulled slowly onto the road and began to drive. The children were feeling much more relaxed now and were beginning to enjoy the adventure. It was then that it started to pour with rain. Chapter 7, Wet But Well. 2.5 hours later, the 5 cold, tired, and damp cousins arrived at Fellowship Farm, with one very, very wet, cold, and tired mummy or auntie. It was not raining at the farm. Dr. Fitzgerald stopped at the farmhouse to let the children out and take the bags inside. Then she drove the car up to the shed. As she parked the ute, she radioed to Mr. Fitzgerald. He came in from the farm to greet them and hear of their adventures. As the children and Dr. Fitzgerald showered and changed, Mr. Fitzgerald made some hot drinks. "So welcome to the Tasmanian summer," he grinned at Nick and Annissa as the children came into the living room where Mr. Fitzgerald was putting the tray of drinks on the table. They gave their uncle a big hug and he lifted them both off the ground. When he put them back down again, he staggered around clutching his back. "Ow! Ow!" he moaned, pretending to be hurt. "You're way too big to be helicopter hugged. When did you two get so big?" he asked, still holding his back and moaning. "Yes, I'm already this big," said Annissa, putting her hand on top of her head. Uncle Flip opened his eyes wide with astonishment. As they all sat down to have their drinks, Mr. Fitzgerald said with a serious face, "So your mother, your auntie, tells me that you saw a UFO with aliens in it on the way home." Leezah, Skye and Olingah knew that their daddy was teasing and they played along with him. "Yes," said Leezah. "There were 300 of them and they took us for a ride to space." "You went for a ride in a spaceship and you didn't get me?" said Daddy, pretending to be hurt. "Yep," laughed Skye. "But they said you can go next time, if you're good." Daddy promised he would try to be good. It was getting close to the time that Dr. Fitzgerald needed to go to the surgery. She hugged each of the children and walked up to the shed to get the motorbike and fill it with petrol. Mr. Fitzgerald headed back out to the farm. And the children took Annissa and Nick to meet Flea, Flex and Fizz. After everyone had been snuggled and licked by Flea, Flex and Fizz, the children attached the leashes and they all headed up to the apple orchard. The apple orchard was full of old apple trees. No one paid it much attention these days, but delicious apples still grew there in the autumn, and it was also a perfect place for hide and seek. The apple orchard was popular for other reasons too. In one of the big old trees, there were some strong ropes firmly tied. The children climbed up the tree and took it in turns to grab hold of the rope and jump. They swished through the air back and forth until the rope was nearly still. Then they jumped off and threw it back to the next person. As they climbed up the tree and got ready to jump, the puppies became very excited. They stood under the branch and yipped and barked and ran in circles. The children were scared the puppies would get hit by the end of the rope as it swung, so Olingah climbed back down the tree and held on to the puppies while Nick jumped first. Then Nick held the puppies while Skye jumped. After each person had a turn to swing, they held the puppies for the next. When everyone had had what seemed like hundreds of swings, the children decided to play hide and seek. Skye and Annissa counted first while the others hid. They scattered through the orchard. Leezah lay down in the long grass and was completely hidden. Nick hid behind one of the bigger trees on the very edge of the orchard near the fence. Olingah quickly climbed one of the trees and hid in the branches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, counted Skye and Annissa slowly, all the way to 40. Then, holding hands, they went looking for the others. They spotted Olingah first. 1, 3, 2, we see you, sang Skye. 1, 2, 3, you got me, sang Olingah back, clambering down the tree. The next person to be found was Nick. He was trying to be tricky and run from his hiding spot to another tree, but he was spotted by the quick eyes of his sister. Neither Nick nor Olingah had seen where Leezah had hidden. So all 4 of them hunted for her. They looked all over the orchard, but nobody found her in the long grass right near where the girls had counted. Finally, Skye had an idea. She knelt down to the puppies and unleashed them. "Where's Leezah? Where's Leezah?" she asked in an excited voice. The puppies dashed around in mad circles, happy to be off their leashes. "Where's Leezah?" all the children asked. Just then they heard a short, high whistle. The puppies dashed off in the direction it had come from. Soon the children heard the laughter of Leezah being licked to death and saw the grass moving where she was tumbling over and over with 3 excited puppies clambering all over her. Chapter 8: Cold Sandwiches and Hot Pizza. "Good hiding spot, sister," said Olingah as Leezah stood up and brushed grass and twigs from her clothes. The children had been playing in the orchard for a long time, and it was already late afternoon. "I'm starving," said Olingah, and everyone agreed that they were very hungry. They put the leashes back on the puppies and left the orchard. As they walked through the paddocks towards the farmhouse, they heard the sound of the ute coming closer. Then it appeared at the top of the hill, and Mr. Fitzgerald stuck his head out of the window. "I thought I might find my lovelies here," he smiled. "Been playing in the orchard?" The children nodded. "Come on, jump on. Your sandwiches and fruit have been ready for ages. They'll be getting cold," he added. "Sandwiches and fruit are meant to be cold, Dad," laughed Skye as the children climbed onto the back of the ute. "Oh," said Daddy. "Well, that's lucky." The children held on tight as Mr. Fitzgerald drove down the hill. The wind blew in their hair and faces. They felt like they were flying. When they arrived at the farmhouse, Mr. Fitzgerald said, "Now you go and have those cold sandwiches and I'll be back in half an hour to collect my helpers for feeding out, okay?" The children waved goodbye and went through the little farmhouse gate, around the house and up the back steps to the veranda. They took off their boots and washed their hands. Their lunch was waiting on the table, covered in a lacy white cloth to keep away the flies. "Yum! Chocolate milk!" said Leezah, noticing that instead of fruit juice, there were 5 cups of her favourite drink. While the children ate and drank, they talked about their favourite foods. "Would you rather have a whole room full of watermelon or a whole room full of pineapple?" asked Annissa. "Pineapple." "No way! Definitely watermelon." "Me too, I'd want watermelon." "Okay," said Skye. "Would you rather have a magic tree that gave you as many Smarties as you wanted, or a magic tree that gave you as many chocolate freckles as you want?" "I want Smarties. I want freckles and Smarties. I'd rather have a magic tree that grew musk sticks," added Leezah. Musk sticks were her favourite. After lunch, Nick and Leezah quickly washed the dishes. As soon as they had finished, there was a horn honk from out the front of the house. The children scrambled to put their boots on and ran to the ute. They climbed on the back and headed for the hay barn. Mr. Fitzgerald backed the ute hard against the stack of hay. The 3 Fitzgerald children climbed the slippery haystack, pushing and pulling each other up. Annissa and Nick followed their example, and soon they were all on the top, pushing the bales down to Mr. Fitzgerald, who was standing on the ute ready to stack them. The feeding out was very quick with 5 ready helpers on the back of the ute, and soon the cows were all fed and happily munching away. Mr. Fitzgerald drove back to the shed and the children attended to the evening chores. As they arrived back at the farmhouse, Dr. Fitzgerald greeted them with a big, flowery smile. She was making pizza dough. "Hurrah!" shouted the children. "Pizza! Can we help?" "Of course. Are your hands clean?" "Yes," they all replied. They had washed at the outside toilet before coming in. Together they chopped vegetables and sliced salami, grated cheese, opened bottles of pizza sauce and cans of pineapple. Then they spread the pizza dough with all that they had prepared and put them in the oven to cook. Chapter 9, A Tent for 5. Dr. Fitzgerald had made the beds up in the spare room and taken Nick and Annissa's bags in there. While the pizzas cooked, all the children showered and put on their pajamas. Then Nick and Annissa came to their cousin's room and they set up the Chinese checkers board for a game. While they played, Leezah had an idea. "Let's ask Mummy and Daddy if we can make a tent in here and all sleep together tonight." "Yeah," said Skye. "Let's finish this game and then go ask. Come on, Annissa, your turn." But before the Chinese checkers was over, the pizza was cooked and Daddy appeared in the doorway of the bedroom to call them for dinner. 3 big pizzas were in the middle of the dining table, and 7 hungry people gathered around to devour them. While they ate, Nick said, "Auntie Romy, can you speak Italian?" Auntie Romy's mouth was full of mushrooms, cheese, capsicum and salami. She shook her head. "Uncle Flip?" "No, Nick. Can you?" "Yes," boasted Nick. He pulled a long string of melted cheese from his plate to above his head and said, "Mozzarella! Mozzarella! Mozzarella!" While they ate, Leezah asked if they could make a tent and sleep in it together. Mummy looked at Daddy, who looked at Mummy, and shrugged his shoulders. "Why not?" said Dad. "There's no school tomorrow." "There's no school for 5 whole weeks," said Skye-Maree.
"Good. Well, you'll have time to catch up on the sleep you're not going to get tonight then,"
replied Dad, getting up from the table and gathering the empty plates. When everyone had finished, Mummy said that she and Daddy would wash up tonight. "Thanks, Mum. Thanks, Dad. Thanks, Aunt Romy. Thanks, Uncle Flip," said the children and ran off to brush their teeth. When teeth were brushed and flossed, Leezah and Nick pulled the biggest sheets they could find out of the linen cupboard, and the children set to work to turn the bedroom into a huge tent. They tied one end of the sheet to the bunk and the other to the cupboard. Then they clipped and tied and hitched and fixed until the tent had 4 walls. Mattresses went in next, followed by quilts and pillows. The tent was complete, except for one thing. Leezah went out to the kitchen where her dad was folding laundry on the kitchen table. "Is it okay if we use this in our tent?" she asked, pointing to the torch attached to the fridge by a magnet. Daddy nodded. Leezah took the torch and went back to the bedroom. The others were all inside the tent. Leezah turned off the bedroom light and everyone cried out. Then she turned on the torch and shone it through the door of the tent. "Don't worry, dears, I'll keep you safe," said Leezah in a funny, high-pitched voice. "From dark monsters," she added in a deep, growling voice and flashed the torch back and forth. The children giggled and screamed and beat Leezah with pillows. Soon, a full-scale pillow war was taking place. The pillow war was interrupted a few minutes later by a call to prayer. The children came panting out of their tent. They sat themselves on the couch, chairs, and floor of the living room and settled down. Annissa and Nick crossed their arms and closed their eyes. Nick and Annissa chanted beautiful prayers in Persian that their father had taught them. Each of the children sang and read prayers and writings. When they had finished, Dr. Fitzgerald thanked the children for their beautiful reverence. She told them they could add a sticker each next to reverence and a sticker each next to unity on the virtues chart. When the children had stuck their stickers, they came and said goodnight. It was still early, but they wanted to go to bed early for some reason. Soon giggles and squeals and pillow fights could be heard coming from the bedroom. Chapter 10. Off to the market. The first week together flew past, filled with fun and laughter and lack of sleep. Before they knew it, it was Sunday. On Sunday, the Fitzgerald family always went to the market. It was a good opportunity to get fresh fruit and vegetables as well as other things. There was usually a local group called Michelangelo playing live music, and it was also time to chat with other people in their town and catch up on news. Most often, they drove to the market in the orange ute. But sometimes they went another way. In the paddock behind the big shed that housed the tractors and utes, there were 3 horses. 2 smaller horses were for riding. The third horse was very, very big and hairy. Her name was Bonnie. She was a Clydesdale and very strong. Mr. Fitzgerald and the children went through the gate to the horse paddock and closed it behind them. They clicked their tongues and whistled. 3 horses came trotting up the paddock. They knew what was waiting for them. When the horses came close, the children held out their hands. They tucked their thumbs underneath so they wouldn't get munched. On each little palm sat an apple. The horses snuffled the children's hand and then crunched the apples with their strong teeth. When they ate, Mr. Fitzgerald put a halter over Bonnie's head and attached a rope to it like a dog's lead. The horses liked the apples and they came sniffing and snorting at the children looking for more. Nick and Annissa were a little afraid and they stepped back towards the gate. "The horses won't hurt you," said Olingah to his cousins. "They just want more apples." Leezah, Skye and Olingah gave the horses a rub, saying, "That's all, greedies, off you go now." Mr. Fitzgerald led Bonnie through the gate and Leezah shut it behind him. The other horses hung their heads over the gate, nibbling at the longer grass on the other side and snorting air through their big round nostrils. "Who wants a ride on Bonnie?" asked Dad. "Me," said Olingah. Daddy hoisted him up. Skye was next. Annissa and Nick wanted to as well, but they were a bit cautious. "Maybe next time," they said. "It's okay," said Leezah. "Once you get used to Bonnie, you'll feel as safe with her as you do with Fizz. Just take some time to get to know her." Leezah walked along with her cousins. They took the horse to the big shed. Annissa and Nick helped their cousins wipe the cart down. It was a few weeks since they had used it, and it was covered in dust. Some spiders had made their home in it too. Then Mr. Fitzgerald put Bonnie's harness on and attached her to the cart. The children climbed into the cart. Skye and Mr. Fitzgerald sat up the front with Skye holding the reins. She clicked her tongue. "Get up, Bon," she said, and the horse moved slowly forward. The cart bumped along behind with 4 happy children in the back. Bonnie pulled the cart slowly down the hill from the shed to the farmhouse. Dr. Fitzgerald handed out hats and put a big empty basket and 3 empty cotton bags in the back of the cart. Mr. Fitzgerald stretched his hand down and said, "Milady." Dr. Fitzgerald bobbed her head, "My lord," took his hand and pulled herself up to the seat at the front of the cart. She took her wallet from out of her back jeans pocket and threw it into the basket in the back. "Okay, Miss Skye-Maree Martha Amelia Fitzgerald, to market." "Get up," said Skye again to Bonnie, and the old Clydesdale pulled away from the farmhouse fence, plodded through the farm gate and out onto the road. Once they were on the open road, Skye flicked the reins and Bonnie picked up the pace to a slow trot. The children in the back held onto the side of the cart and enjoyed the ride. Annissa and Nick felt their hearts bursting with happiness. They loved their cousins. They loved Fellowship Farm and their Auntie Romy and Uncle Flip. They thought happily of the days that stretched ahead of them and wished they would never end.